Hey, what's up, everybody? You're listening to Cyberpunk Uncensored. And this episode, I want to talk about Night City. I want to dive into everything about Night City. But before we do that, I want to introduce my guests. I have with me today Phil and Eric. Eric, you've met before. He was on a previous episode. He also plays Dodger on Team 2 for the Cyberpunk ongoing weekly campaign that I run. Phil, you might have seen him in the Cyberpunk Uncensored group. He's always posting great topics and stuff. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves a little bit. Guys, if you want to just kind of tell your background on gaming and who you are and stuff. Phil, you want to let's start it off?
I would be happy to. Hey, I'm Phil. I've been gaming since 1987, so I'm an old guy, but I still love the hobby. And I started running Cyberpunk the weekend that it debuted back in 1988.
Nice. That's awesome.
Uh, I had absolutely no clue what the hell I was doing,
And
but I love the hobby so much that I kept, you know, persisting and persisting, and here I am 32 years later, the only game master who games Cyberpunk in my particular group.
nice. Awesome. And so I imagine you followed the different versions and you're just like us excited for Red to come out and the continuation.
I'm very curious to see what Red has to offer, really. I mean, has it kept up with our modern technology? Has it, gone even beyond that? Because with 2013, which is where I started, things like cell phones were far distant. I mean, they were like, okay, we're going to have these things. They're going to be the size of, you know,
Right.
a toaster oven, but
Just like in 2020,
they're
it's
going to be cool.
the advanced 2020 edition phone. It's a flip phone, and that's like the future. It's great.
Exactly, exactly. I want to know what they're going to do as far as like, the communications and not the like overarching big technologies like spaceships, or what are you going to do about the subtleties?
Yeah,
What
just little
those things
things.
that you have, right, the little things. How are they going to, put that to us?
Yeah, but okay. Before we dive into that, Eric, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Eric. I have been in the gaming scene for about 10 years now, so I'm much more new blood compared to Phil and Rob here. But I've sort of just jumped head first and really got into Cyberpunk and everything about it. I played with a few other systems, but this one probably keep me pulling me back more than the others. I think that the lore they've created and just how everything's been really it just was spot on when it came out. And I just feel this is sort of like a timeless kind of system of the little guy versus the big corporations, the authoritarian. So I think I really enjoy it.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's why I love it too. It's just that vibe. It's just so cool. Like, and for anybody that doesn't know, I started on Dungeons and Dragons, got into Cyberpunk when that came out, but like, I still love Dungeons and Dragons for that medieval vibe, fantasy, drink a potion and magic stuff. But to me, Cyberpunk, I love that even more. Like, I'm more obsessed with Cyberpunk. I don't know. There's just something about that dark dystopian, like gritty, futuristic vibe, and just it's real cutthroat, and I just love that about it.
Well, I think I just sort of hit me. Cyberpunk feels very more like a film. Isn't this, and like for D&D can feel like a story being told. Cyberpunk just feels like a straight up movie that you're a
Yeah,
part of, I think.
totally.
Feels
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
cinematic.
you can actually imagine yourself, on those rain slick streets, you know, elbow to elbow with, the throng of, just strangers passing you by in the night.
Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah, it
I,
has
I agree. It definitely has that just that more realistic grit to it where it's like, yeah, you can picture it like a film or like real life. It's awesome. But yeah, let's dive into Night City. I want to make this episode real focused on Night City. Get so that way anybody that wants to listen, whether you're a game master or a player, or you just love hearing about it, reading about it, you just love Cyberpunk in general or the style. I just want to give people a little bit of everything and anything about Night City. So let's start with the history of Night City. We know it was originally not called Night City. It was being founded by who was it? Richard
Richard
Alex
Knight.
Knight, And yeah, anybody want to explain? It was the Coronado Bay. Originally, it was a project he was working on, but then he was killed.
Yeah, take a
Yeah,
guess
it
by
was
who?
a oh, of course. It was a resort town that, he was going to develop into this new night city, and he was on the way to creating this vision that he had, and ran uh, ran up against some mobsters who, well, didn't quite like the way he was doing things, and they killed him, and they named Night City in his honor.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
the mobsters, the people.
Right. Right. No.
True.
Exactly. Once he was killed, the council or whatever, I guess, out of respect, named the city after him. Yeah. What
Yeah.
were you gonna say there, Eric?
Oh, I was to say, well, yeah, like they did a very, they kill him and then they name the city after him. Very,
Right.
very appropriate for how the mob works, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it wasn't the mob that named it, but yeah. Um, yeah, so I mean the history is just what I love about it is it starts instantly with just that dark cyberpunk vibe. It's not just a city where you're jumping into a futuristic sort of vibe, dark city. Even the history of how the city itself was named and founded and all that, it just has murder and uh, mystery behind it, because like they didn't figure out who did it. I mean, they know it was mob related or whatever, but it got brushed under the rug. People were obviously paid off, or it was something corrupt involved. But it's huge. The guy who was founding it was murdered, and yet it goes on. you know
Yeah,
but
it didn't stop there. Remember, we only covered like the first half of their history right there.
right, exactly. So
It,
like
it was bigger. It was bigger than him, so it continued on.
right, and that's what I love about Night City too, is just in general how big it feels. And I don't mean by like size, by so many streets, so many buildings, whatever. And that's, it's huge in itself, and that too, that's great. But I love the big feel of Night City, that it's this independent city, that just runs itself. It is just this huge machine in motion that's driven by a council that's really the corporations, that's really the money behind it, which is just a very in your face sort of, I don't know, it feels so real. It's kind of how reality is, but they're just kind of, they're not scared to show it in Cyberpunk. but
Yeah.
I love that
Exactly.
about
That's the
it.
whole thing. I mean, the corporations are in control. They don't hide behind their puppet politicians. Okay, we own this. Deal with it.
Yeah. No, exactly. And let's talk about the corporations a little bit, because I wanted to talk about that too. Some of the more famous corporations, and obviously we all know Arasaka and Militech, the big security and arms and banking and whatever companies. That these two majors are the ones that you know butt heads and fought in the fourth corporate war, led up the forces behind the corporations in the fourth corporate war, I should say, and are the reason that shit happened and went into red. And without skipping ahead too much, I don't want to start getting into that just yet. But what other corporations other than Arasaka and Militech? Any
Well,
other?
you got
My favorite one is Network 54, but I think Eric was about to say that. Sorry.
yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah,
network, but
yeah.
go ahead. Just tell me why it's your favorite.
Oh, I mean, when you control the information, you control everything. I mean, you control people's hearts and minds. You control the people.
Oh yeah. No, I love it when it comes into play. Like we have a campaign with a media, and she's got some ties to that, and I love kind of incorporating a possible backstory or side story to anything that face value of typical media, because just like you said, there's a whole other fucking dark side when it comes to media when you think of that in Cyberpunk, because they're in control, and it's just like any other corporation if you really think about that.
Yeah, you also have Trauma Team, which is just sort of one of the largest businesses, and I just feel like Trauma Team has that way of they can be a godsend or they could be the worst nightmare when you're playing as a cyberpunk. It's just like you don't know which side of the coin you're gonna be on when they show up.
Right,
It
exactly.
all it depends. If you're a client, they're on the up. They're on the good side.
Oh no, totally. Yeah, yeah. No, that you want them to come save the day when you're in trouble, because they're gonna come in, kick everyone's ass, and get you out of there. It's gonna cost you a pretty penny, but they're gonna do that. They're gonna get the job done. But like Eric said, it can get dangerous too. Like even if they're coming to help another client, and you're not involved, but you're just considered quote unquote in the way, you could really get fucked up. They are a force to be reckoned with, even though they are healers, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And also
that's
just the whole idea of trauma team opens up a lot of avenues for players if they're playing a trauma team. It has like almost every role available. It can
Yeah.
be a really good starting point for new players, I think.
Oh no, totally. When I was
I agree.
a long time ago, when I back in my day when I was playing more than I was a game master, for a while I played a cop that was basically part of trauma team and doing security work and going into all kinds of sticky situations so they could extract their clients, and it led to so many crazy things and conspiracies, as well as all the violence and rowdiness that you can imagine comes with that. But I loved it. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I did a trauma team campaign. Well, it didn't live very long because people backed out and were flaky. But that's all you have to do is look at modern day ambulances and EMTs. You've got a whole boatload of stories right there that you can adapt to cyberpunk in an instant.
Oh yeah, especially now, especially now with everything going on. We're
Yeah.
we're almost living in it right now.
I think I feel safer in the cyberpunk world. At least you know who's on your side there.
Yeah,
Nobody.
and you can be seriously
Well, if
armed.
Yeah.
if they're shooting at you, they're not on your side.
Exactly. It's easy to see. It's easy to know. But okay, so yeah,
Unless you're my ex, then she might be shooting at you and still at your on your side. Huh?
yeah.
Bang, bang.
So
Sorry, honey.
aside from those corporations, any others come to mind?
I didn't really gotta use any of them, but a
Well,
lot of the like orbital
Biotechnica,
air,
Petrochem. Those are
those
always
are always
big.
big, solid.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
huge
Shady
names.
too.
Yeah, huge names. And just, Biotechnica and their relationship with Petrochem can lead to so many great ideas and stories because of how, with the fuel supply chain sort of thing. And I love the fact that it's, it has the whole oil industry vibe to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, aside from that, you said what? What was it? Orbital?
Orbital air, like that whole concept of the elite living in space and sort of looking down and holding that Damocles sword over us of if the countries get too uppity, they're just going to drop an asteroid essentially.
Yeah.
I just feel like that opened up a lot of avenues I don't think I ever got the chance to really explore as a player or a GM.
Me neither. No,
yeah.
not at
I
all.
wanted to do that because what they say in the history they dropped a rock on Colorado Springs. So basically, there's this big crater where Colorado Springs used to be,
Yeah.
and
Oh.
that's
Yeah,
a good opening for a nomad adventure. Okay, let's go out there and see what's left.
yeah, that is a great idea. Yeah, I didn't even think, I never played to that and I never GM'd to that. That would make a kind of interesting subject to try to work towards or work in. That's pretty cool.
But
Um,
also just the small companies too. Like I'm just looking at the 2020 book, and they talk about like wetware, doing
oh
Zeta
yeah.
Tech and Microtech, just the corporate espionage that opens up with all these smaller companies trying
And
to one up each other.
and I've been seeing a lot of buzz, coming from the Art Halsorian Twitter account and Instagram and stuff, and I'm sure you see it too. But now they're showing all the neo corporations because of after that fourth corporate war and the pocket nuke and everything getting fucked up and Arasaka and Militech going at it. It allowed Night City during the rebuild for a lot of new or neo corps to kind of come into fruition and rise up the ranks. And there's still some old, classics that are still going to be there, but they did hint around saying that some are no longer going to be there because of it, or they've evolved into something new or different. So I think that's going to be pretty cool too.
Yeah, because I think
Definitely. Go for it, dude. Sorry.
oh, I was gonna say because I think Arasaka's I think from what I remember hearing and reading about at the Fourth World War, they sort of got split as a company. They can't technically operate in the U.S. anymore, and I
Right.
think they're having an internal coup. And Militech just got absorbed by the army or the military forces.
Well,
They
yeah,
got
when
sort of just
when all that went down, it was what President Kress or whatever she put
Yeah,
Militech.
Elizabeth Fresh.
Yeah, Kress. Yeah, she put Militech pretty much in charge. I mean, because of that, because of the whole Arasaka thing. So they're definitely banned from coming over.
Yeah. So it's like I don't even know how powerful Melitech's gonna be or
Oh, I think
what
it's
they're gonna
gonna
look
be,
like.
yeah, I picture it's gonna be, and I don't want to dive too much into Red, but a little taste of post-apocalyptic, authoritarian sort of like uh, like how we were talking about the top 75 films in the other podcast, Eric. It kind of reminded me a hint of that Tank Girl esque. You know what I mean? Like where
Yeah.
there's still corpse in this, but it's almost a little pushed because of the nuke fallout and everything that happens. But then obviously you see in 2077, they've built over the years and went back to even beyond what 2020 was. But let's not jump into that just yet. I think we kind of talked great about the corpse. Let's get into some famous people. Night City has a lot of great famous characters, and some of the classics obviously are Johnny Silverhand, the rocker, and Morgan Blackhand, the number one solo. But who else comes to mind? And before we move on to that, just since I named Silverhand, there is rumors too, like through the fourth corporate war and the nuke. I guess it was him and Blackhand. Rumors that they were the ones setting it off in the Arasaka building during a raid or whatever to get security info or something. But there's rumors of him being frozen or cryogenics, and they're gonna bring him back, and you see him in the 2077 trailer stuff. So there's definitely lots of hints about that sort of shit. But aside from him and Morgan Blackhand, the number one solo, who else comes to mind?
Well, for me, it's Nomad Santiago because
Oh
he's mentioned a lot, but and also he's just been a key character for 2020. He's sort of just he's the wheelman, but he's just one of the major representatives of what it is to be a nomad, I think.
yeah, what weren't in one of the in the campaign I'm running where you're playing Dodger, didn't another character, I can't remember, a female or a name, Santiago, come up, and I was like, man, that sounds so familiar, and I couldn't
I
put
think
my
it's
finger.
Nina Santiago,
Yeah,
I think.
I
She's
could
at a
I
I
couldn't
don't,
put
don't know
my
if there's any relation, but
yeah, I couldn't put my finger on it during the game, and and that's what it was. Remember, I kept saying, God damn it, that's that name.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
who else?
me,
That's the famous nomad. Who else can we think of? What were we gonna say?
the one I know of, the one I use, because I don't really use canon characters too often, but the one I use comes from the Interface magazines. I'm going back a little bit here,
Sure.
and there's a character called Spider Lady.
Nice.
Wicked, wicked intelligent, geneticist, cybernetics, all of that, but she's completely batshit crazy. And she's usually the kind of character that you want to see her if you're really hurt badly, but even then you don't want to see her because she might do something weird with your genetics without you knowing about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, and you just said something that, I got to reiterate too, because I'm with you on that. I rarely in my games use any of the iconic characters. I don't play them in. I let my edge runners kind of be the quote unquote heroes, even though it's not really hero, but you know what I mean? I let them be the mains. They might come in contact with other badasses and things, don't get me wrong. It is Cyberpunk and it is Night City. It's dangerous. But I try not to drop in any like of these iconic famous people and stuff. I think when you do that, it feels a bit cartoony or something. I don't know if that's the right word, but to me
I,
it doesn't
I
work.
yeah, no, it takes away the spotlight from your characters who are the star of the movie.
Right.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It sort of turns your characters into sort of a supporting cast for these major characters of lore. And I appreciate the characters being there for like maybe one shots or intros, but I think that they are just there's too much about them that just is sort of distracting from your main characters of letting them build their stories and such. It's like just talk about Alt Cunningham. She's like one of the quintessential figures and just really stands above the rest. But if you put her into any kind of campaign, she's gonna be the focal point the entire time, I think.
Right,
Oh heck yeah,
exactly.
she will be.
No, and I think you said it well. Like the edge runners, the main players. They're the lead characters of the movie, so to speak. And I think when you bring in these famous folklore people, it just kind of outshines. It makes it weird to me. It starts feeling cartoony or played out, or like all of a sudden there's actors in there. You know what I mean? It just starts feeling weird because they're
Right.
famous. They're famous. But that's not to say I don't appreciate him because it does make for great reading. It sparks ideas with characters. You can kind of insinuate some of their appearances and things within games, or use some of their history and things within it without getting too much. You know what I mean? Like I do
Yeah,
appreciate them.
right. You can reference them. Hey, Morgan came through here 2 weeks ago, and he said blah blah blah, and you remind me of him. And
Right. Exactly.
They also create a really good influence for your players too, for what kind of characters they want to build almost.
oh yeah, no, that's a great point to make too. It totally does. It gives a great inspiration, you know. But yeah, I think those are kind of the main famous people in Night City, and I know that there's so many more. I mean, on some of
Oh
those
yeah.
yeah, if you go into
module
the main
books.
book, they've got in the back of the book, all the denizens of Night City, such as Bag Lady, the well,
Right.
she's technically homeless, but she knows everything that's going on in Night City. So if you want to, find somebody or find something, find Bag Lady
Right.
or White
Yeah.
Lion, the Ultra Fixer.
Yeah, and there's a whole list of them in like a lot of these modules and stuff. Eric, remember we were going through it, and that's how
Yeah.
we got the Petrochem guards and Boa Boa info. And I mean, there's just pages and
We could
pages.
we could spend hours going through all these back characters to just have these histories essentially.
And it's so cool that Cyberpunk does that. It's not like you have to get all these novels and stuff to extract characters and things, but like they actually list it, like it almost feels like you're diving into a phone book, like this, like the Night City. uh,
Good
uh
analogy.
yeah,
Yeah, well, the Night City book, the source book for Night City,
exactly, yeah,
is essentially a giant phone book.
no, I love it,
Or
exactly. It's all like labeled. They even mark off the different buildings, but like all the encounters and people, it feels so real and so deep without having to get into like a novel-esque story behind each person or all this fantasy stuff or whatever. It's like just like stats listed, almost like you're collecting baseball cards or something. I love it. It's crazy.
yeah, it's
And I love
easy
the
to
Night
use.
City.
Or
And about sorry, dude. I
that's
was
okay.
about to say I love the Night City source book because it adds flavor. It's not just hey, I'm going out to shoot this guy in the head or whatever. It's like hey, I have to take mass transit. It tells you about the mass transit.
Right. Exactly. I love it. Yeah, the details are unreal. It's like it's real. You know what I mean? They lay it out as if it's a real place and a real, the real working city. I love it.
Yeah, I think that's what makes Night City really good, is that it's sort of an extra NPC almost. It is an extra character because it has so much personality. It has so much depth and history of Night City is its own like its own entity, and I think
Totally.
that really helps like drive the players.
Yeah, and speaking of, that, let's move on to the other, part of this I wanted to go over, which is the aesthetics and vibe and feel of Night City. We went over the history of the famous people and corporations and stuff, but aside from the details and the book knowledge of Night City or whatever, there's also this whole vibe and feeling and aesthetics, and it's very open for translation, which I love. Like I've played and I've GM'd and I've watched other games where people have different interpretations of how the weapon stores work and armor stores and cybernetics and ripper docks and where the combat zone is and exactly how it is. And like it's all set very much within what Cyberpunk lays out and what the Night City source book lays out, but you can really dive into it, you know?
And it's great that
Yeah,
it has so much material that you can just, mold it to your vision. It's not you have to do this way and that way and that way. Night City gives you so much. I mean, so much that okay, I'm gonna do this instead of that. I'm
Right.
gonna put the combat zone over here instead of over here. And
Yeah, and what I love about the vibe of it too is that dystopian futuristic stuff where it's not necessarily post-apocalyptic like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome vibe, but it has that sort of extreme spectrum where there's very little in between. I mean, I know there's quote unquote called like beavers and what are the mall people or whatever, like those sort
yeah.
of,
mall rats, huh?
yeah,
Yeah,
like
they
the
actually
the
live in the mall.
but like what I mean, like the middle level corp workers. I'm talking. I forget what they're called. It's not the mall rats, but
Wage slaves?
no, no, no. Uh, let me see if I can find it
They're
real
middle
quick.
management, man.
But my point is mall plexers and beavers and all that. They're what's
Yes,
considered like quote unquote 9 to 5ers, right? Okay, so that's like middle management, middle America or whatever you would call it. But
right. They
but
would
that's
be the middle class of cyberpunk.
right. But to me, that's always few and far in between. It always feels more like it's extreme fucking corpse. Like either you have a good job or you have a shitty job, or you're in the core combat zone. You know what I mean? Like it always, to me, I feel like if there is that middle level, it's very, NPC, like pushing them around, their kind of background actor style. It always has more of an extreme vibe in my world, anyways. When I picture Night City, it always just seems so extreme, like one end or the other, you know?
Yeah. But when you look what Night City, like what Talsorian gave us, they gave us a small chunk of this sprawling city, and it's just like the highlights. It is like only seeing downtown LA, and then you're making up what you want the rest of the city to be for whatever it is to fit your goals. So I
Right.
think by them being so vague and creating the city, but giving it so much personality, they allowed us as like GMs to really build it to what we wanted. And I think that's what makes it really useful. It's like they have a lot of personality, but it's also very malleable. It's like we can do so much with it.
Yeah, totally. And when it comes to that, let me get your guys' opinion, because I have a few things I want to bring up about that. Like, I think we can all agree the aesthetics, vibe, feel is very cutthroat and dark. It's like, when you picture it, you picture like, wet streets and neon signs and shit, and like huge
Yep.
skyscrapers, or you're getting into like mega complex apartment living style places, getting to the combat zone where it's just rundown buildings and filth and fighting, and you hear gunshots going off and it's crazy. But some of the things I've seen come into interpretation and stuff is like, for instance, night markets. I love night markets in the sense that, like, okay, there might be weapon stores around, and then people always either put that in the regular part of the city or combat zone. I've always seen people prefer how they see weapon stores and armor stores and cybernetic options. Obviously, cybernetic weapons are ripper doc and considered illegal, quote unquote. But night markets, how do you like to play those out, and where do you put those? And then also, what do you think about what I said about the weapon stores and armor stores and all that?
Well, for me, weapon stores would be like, your low caliber things that you would find in the mall, kind of like you would find in a Walmart out west. You
Yeah.
can't have them here in Maryland, but you can go out to a Walmart in, Ohio and, buy, a shotgun. So it would never be anything huge or no repeating weapons, anything like that. It'd be your sportsmen, your hunting rifles, your low caliber pistols, that sort of thing. If you want something big, then you have to get out into those rain soaked streets and find a fixer who's willing to hook you up.
Yeah, see, how I've always played that is like kind of what you said. Like all your basics can be found at like a local, hunting shop or department store or whatever. Same with basic armors, right? I've always played that. And cybernetics. Cybernetic weapons, I've always made it, you have to find a back alley ripper doc or whatever, because cybernetic weapons are considered completely illegal no matter what. And you can find those anywhere, but you got to find them through a fixer, like you said. But for me, when it comes to like, automatic rifles and exotic weapons and, grenades and some of the more heavier weapons that you wouldn't find in the regular department stores around the city or whatever, you have to go to like a weapon shop or store in the combat zone, where cops typically don't even go out there. They don't even give a shit about the combat zone. And that's kind of how I've played that. Or a night market is always, first choice. Yeah, your local fixer hookup or something to that extent sets up a night market, or you have a hookup to a night market and you go there. It's usually a bunch of vendors or one main guy with his different, options, and you buy shit there. What do you guys think?
Well, for me, I would usually take it a step further for the night market. Of the night market just gets your foot in the door of this is the guy who sells guns, but if you want the good stuff, you got to go meet him here and such. Make my players sort of do that extra footwork and see if they really put
Nice.
in that situation where they might be in more trouble trying to get this one item. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. No, and that opens up for other possible side missions and adventures. And, because no matter what you plan, players will always come up with something you don't think of, and things can always go on, a tangent. And that's a great way to kind of bait some tangent stuff, is like you want some
Oh
exotics or
yeah, I mean,
something more, you
that
got to meet
breeds
them over here.
tangents.
What was that? Sorry.
I said that kind of breeds tangents right there.
Oh,
oh
yeah,
yeah,
totally. Yeah, it's great.
especially because so many bad things can happen at a night market.
Oh, yeah.
No, they can't.
In Night City in general. That's what I love about Night City. It's so dangerous. And in the book, the funny thing, Night City is always listed like, when you're in the regular, I forget what they call it, but civilized areas, whether it be Japantown, China, or Little Italy, or old downtown or corporate zone, whatever.
Old downtown. I love an old
Pretty much
Yeah, yeah.
downtown.
anything named
But
is a civilized
right,
area.
right. But they always in the book, and I love this. It's so funny. Like in the Night City source book, they list it almost like it's going out, like an advertisement going out to tourists. They'll list it in the book, like yeah, come to Night City. It's totally safe. You don't need any more than a basic pistol to walk around, or it says something to that extent. I forget what exactly it says, but it kind of suggests like it's totally safe here. And for me, anytime I've played and anytime I've game mastered, it's like, yeah, okay, there are cops around the regular parts of the city, like just like they don't go to the combat zone. It's very booster gang and hardcore there. But in the regular part of the city, there's still poser gangs and, you know, other gangs, and there's still like craziness and violence and robbing and conspiracy and big corporations doing shady shit behind closed doors and stuff. So like, I do play it like there are cops. You do have to be aware of cops and cameras in my world or whatever, but
Mine too.
but it usually takes them a while to get there, or they might get bought off, or you might get away with it, or you know what I mean, or they might show up and start wrecking business and being cops, but I definitely don't play it like how the book kind of describes it. I always felt like that was a little bit of sarcasm in the book, the way that they worded that.
They definitely did. You can just look at the encounters in the 2020 book, like daytime encounters. There's a good chance you're going to get hit by booster gangs and solo
Right.
teams. So it's
Right.
like,
Oh yeah, the
even in the
booster
day,
gangs don't
this
care.
isn't safe anywhere.
What was that, Phil?
I said the booster gangs don't care that it's daylight.
Right. No,
You're
hey,
fresh meat.
it's Night City. It's not just the guy's name. It stands for Night City. It's dark. It's scary. No, I'm
And,
kidding.
and
But
that's another one. That's a great thing about the aesthetics in the field. There have been so many environmental calamities, not to mention, huge rocks being thrown into the earth that kicked up so much pollution and dust into the air that you don't really see the sun other than a little small glowing dot in the sky.
right. No, and let's take it a step further. We kind of nailed the aesthetics of Night City and what it is, but you know, going into Red, post Fourth Corporate War, that pocket nuke went off. We mentioned that earlier. The rumors are what Johnny Silverhand and Morgan, Black Hand set it off or something during a raid on the Arasaka building, trying to get security data or something to that extent. There's
Something
also
to that.
rumors
Something.
that it
Yeah.
could have been Arasaka in defense of it, whatever. But no matter what, it happened. It went off. It went down in the corporate zone. It pretty much made a huge fucking explosion and crater and cleared out, and like million people
I will
died.
say this: there was no crater because it was 300 feet up. So, but it was still an Urberst. So think more
No,
of
no, I read.
Nuremberg.
Yeah, but did you read in the World Book or on the Talsorian? I forget where I read it, but they said it left a huge crater. It killed, it cleared out that whole center area, and
I think it was the World Book.
it killed like a million people. Left a crater there, or something to that effect. I know I read the word crater somewhere, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But my point is, look, the bomb went off. Like a million people died, and then because of the nuclear fallout, another 250,000 people died, and then it was like what 20 years, 22 years later, or whatever, till they had time to really build back up the city enough that people are living in there again, and that's what Red is going to represent when Red comes out, which is hopefully coming out at the end of the summer. Which I've heard rumors to, well, not rumors, but they've posted that before. But when that comes out, that's the vibe of that's the aesthetics, vibe, and feel of Night City at that point. It's going to be red skies from the nuclear fallout. There's going to be like toxic rains that happen when you enter buildings. Apparently, you go through washes. Like, how today when you enter certain stores, there'll be like that blow dryer thing that blows dust off you and shit or whatever,
Yeah.
or helps
Yeah,
with the
they
AC.
have entryway decon chambers.
Exactly, and they're going to have wash stations. Like I was listening to Mike Pondsmith GM a session with Matthew Lillard and Luke Gygax and,
Yeah,
and
I
a few
saw that one
others.
too. That was great.
Yeah, and when they went into Forlorn Hope or whatever, and they hit the wash station, and they go in and everyone's wet, and it's just a normal thing, So like the streets are gritty, and I just picture it's even nastier. It's like more wet. There's a red sky. It just sounds, as if they could. It got more Night City. It got more cyberpunk, if that was even possible. It just sounds like it got grittier.
Well, I want to say I think for the feel of it, I want to say that it's gonna look like probably post World War II Germany. Sort of we're in that
And
it's in that time of rebuilding. Everybody's sort of on edge. You have so many people vying for power.
And real quick,
It's that
I want
everyone's
to
gonna be
Extremely
paranoid, I
unrealistic.
I
think.
want to get both of y'all's feedback on this, but before we get in that, one other thing I forgot to mention. It reminds me of like what I really loved about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition, which I loved when I was a kid. I was really into that. Is Dark Sun. That to me is like Dark Sun to AD&D back in the day had that same vibe that I feel Red is going to do to Cyberpunk, if that's even possible, because Cyberpunk is already rough and dark and just tough as fuck. And now like Red, I feel is like it's going to take it up a notch. I picture everyone's like wet and angry and the sky's red and it's dirty and the corporations are building back and just cutthroat. It's getting even crazier if you can imagine it. But let me hear
Oh,
both, go on, Eric. Let's hear your feedback, and then I want to hear
so
Phil.
I'm gonna say I definitely agree because Cyber 2020, all the big companies were established, all the rules were set, everyone knew where the lines were, and that's where edge runners come into play. They were the ones who were doing the jobs, they were breaking the rules, they were like just floating between trying to make ends meet, and all these big companies were pretty much just vying for power with their pawns. Now all of that is gone. The big companies have been pretty much decimated. The city, which represented corporate takeover, got blown up by corporations.
Right.
So it's like everybody is like really raw. Everybody's gonna be like really paranoid of they don't know whose side is gonna turn on them because everybody's really cutthroat, like you're saying. It's gonna be just it's gonna be nuts to say at least. Like
Yeah,
because there's no central control anymore.
I can't picture like, Cyberpunk getting any crazier or rougher or tougher or grittier, but I really think like the way that they're describing Red and the way that they came up with the fourth corporate war and climbing out of it, man, I think they did it justice so far. Like I'm picturing like, God damn, it is gonna be rougher and grittier and more fucked up. But
I
let's hear
can't
from
wait to
Phil. What
see
were
what
you
the
gonna say?
players are going to do because they're trying to fill in these power vacuums. Like you said, the corporations are gone. Where will you get your food or your weapons? And it's not all going to be new stuff. It's going to be stuff that was left over that someone found, polished up, and sold to you. But
Right.
finding new stuff is going to be extremely hard. And where do the characters, get their cool stuff?
Yeah, and things are definitely shifting. Like you see in Red, like now there's no more main internet. Net running has to be like within 6 meters to hack into systems and stuff. They can't just do it
Yeah.
remotely. And like
It's just
solo,
6 meters.
yeah,
Well, everything's a closed system now. An
Well, I
actual
mean, I know
web
it was a
net
closed
doesn't
system. I
exist
didn't know it had to
anymore.
be 6 meters. I thought maybe you could be like, maybe,
no, no,
50 yards that way and
no, no,
still do
no.
it.
You have to be within
No,
6 meters. But and then the other
really
thing,
crappy Wi-Fi.
yeah, exactly. And but it makes sense if you think about the way they're laying all this out, how everything goes down and what it evolves to. But the other thing I really like is, all the public transportation is done and fucked, and satellite stuff. So like nomads I've, kind of taken over transportation. Like if you want to go from city to city or travel or send some goods or whatever, you got to work with some nomads. And I really like that. I think that's cool.
Yeah,
And I've done
nomads
that
have
with
become
my
the teamsters now.
Yeah.
right, and I've done that with my game already, because I have a buddy that loves playing Nomads. And after the collapse, if you go into Home of the Brave, you see all the people that died. So most of the populations are centered in the big cities, East Coast, West Coast, maybe Texas, but a lot of stuff in the middle is empty, and only the nomads are skilled enough to get you through there safely.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Well, I think another thing I don't even think of till now, but a lot of the arcology cities and like the corporate farms, what's happening with those now? Because if a lot of the big companies pretty much didn't survive the fourth corporate war, that's going to be like, I want to say Red Dawn almost of a lot of food shortages right there.
Right.
So
No,
that's a whole other thing you can throw into the mix.
yeah, I'm curious how they handle that. Like, I imagine it's going to go into, a lot of synthetic stuff. I think the biotechnica sort of Sav oil versus petrochem stuff is really going to come into play with that, like biosculpt stuff. I imagine there's going to be a lot of like sort of mutated food options and things from that and the nuclear fallout stuff. Like, I wonder if there's going to be a little touch of, uh, mutation and weirdness or something, like I don't want to say obviously, it's not going to dabble in like magic or go full
Right.
Shadowrun realm style shit, but
We'll
I
go to
wonder,
cyber generation style.
right. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if it's going to lean a little bit into, like a Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome mutation, like, Thunderdome style dude. You know what I mean? Like I wonder if it's gonna
Yeah,
have a little bit, a little touch of that. At least out in the wastelands, I wouldn't mind that. You know,
we
city.
might even.
Yeah, I mean that's where it belongs, right out there.
Yeah,
It's
like
out there,
hills
you
have
know.
eyes, hills have eyes style motherfuckers coming at you, and nomads gotta get you through it. You know?
I don't know. I would say I can definitely see a life path of family mutated your genetic problems. It's like I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Fallout does have a lot of problems.
Oh,
It's like,
totally. Your life path is like, you're orphaned because of that, or like you said, your family got sick from it and died, or like, like
yeah,
it's gonna
or
play
shit, you
in.
start getting some bad stat like debuffs because of it. It's like a -2 body. You grew up on a place that was irradiated.
Oh God, that's true.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. No, I love it. I think Red is, you know, I'm very, very optimistic about Red. I think it's gonna be fucking intense. It's gonna be gritty. It's gonna be raw. It's gonna be dirty and fucking violent. It's gonna be everything that it seems to be,
2020 still is.
and yeah, and more. No, and that's the
Right, and
thing.
more.
And that's the thing is I couldn't even imagine getting more than 2020 because that's just so gritty and fucked up as it is. But just judging
Every
by what
RPG
they've
is
come
gonna
up
pull
with.
out all the stops.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think like with what they've come up with so far with Red, it's like, oh my God, like they fucking did. Like it sounds right, dude. It sounds great.
Well, I
I'm
think
excited.
Red is getting that like boost of energy, that injection of like just cash flow and support that is needed for a long time for Cyberpunk. It's like we're finally getting like the attention that we've sort of always had, but been
Well,
spread out.
you've heard me say it 100 times. I've said it in videos and I've said it in person and when we stream and we've talked about this. I really believe Cyberpunk is about to really blow up the same way that fifth edition D&D did. And what's going to happen is like, D&D was getting big and they kind of streamlined with fifth edition, made it a little bit easier for everyone to get along with and understand the rules and play. And, it got featured on Stranger Things. It got in South Park. It got in a few other recent movies and series like references. Like it got popular as fuck. All of a sudden celebrities are playing and streaming it. And all of a sudden you can find the box sets on the shelves in Walmart and Target. I mean, man, it came a long way from back in the day where it was like, oh no, you're worshiping Satan with that and you can't do it. And, like all the bad press and
Technically, you
like,
guys got a Tom Hanks movie.
and I feel like, but no, I know, but my point is that I think that D&D blew up because of all that great exposure, then the celebrities, and it went mainstream, and all of a sudden it is just huge, and now there's all the exposure for it. I think Cyberpunk is about to do the same thing. They're streamlining with Red. We already see it in the combat and in the things that they're doing to make it just a little easier. And then it's going to be easier for new players to jump on board because of that. And then Red's going to come out with all that hype. And then, man, let's talk about 2077. The video game has got so much hype. And when that comes out, even if it's like half as good as it says, it's going to be huge. It's going to have so many people into it and playing it. It's going to set things over. And I think that's really what's going to happen, set it apart. Netflix is going to come out with that cartoon. There's going to be other shows and movies even more so blown up. Celebrities are going to start playing it and streaming it the same way 5th edition D&D, and I think it's just going to get big and it's going to be great. But that's my prediction. That's what I think is happening because of 2077. But what do you guys think about all that?
Phil, go take it. Did we lose
Well,
Phil?
for me, I think, as I put it, we're in a cyberpunk renaissance. They released the old material, getting people refamiliarized with the world of cyberpunk. So we've got that going on. Hey, guys, come over here. We've got red for you. You're used to red? Okay, come over here. We've got 2077. And we're just going to take you from the beginning all the way up to this new apex with 2077.
Yeah, no, I think that's great with the lore and what they're doing for the city, but let's not forget 2077 is the video game, so like it is a completely different
Oh
beast,
yeah,
and I
but
think
it's going to bring people back down because
that's
I've
what I'm
actually talked to
saying.
people who are looking forward to 2077 did not know that it was
Right.
based on a tabletop RPG.
Oh, I've seen that too. I posted a picture on the Cyberpunk Uncensored fan page of the original sketch of Morgan Blackhand from the original first printing of 2020, right? And
Mhm.
I posted that and I just put in the thing like, hey, can you name this guy? And my wife Valerie shared it to some cyberpunk groups. I went and when I got back online later in the day, I saw she shared it, and in one of the groups, it had like 50 something comments, and everybody was like just naming what they thought he was, like thinking that I was posting a picture like help me describe this character I came up with or something. And then only like a couple people were like, no, this is Morgan Blackhand from
Me.
2020 and things. And I was like, oh my God. Like I even commented myself like, oh my God, I can't believe so many people in this cyberpunk group. Luckily it wasn't our group, the Cyberpunk Uncensored group. I feel like everybody kind of knows what's up, but not that it's elitist at all. But in this other group, I was just shocked. How many people didn't know who Morgan Blackhand was, and I can definitely see like the video game is going to blow up so big. There's like you said, there's definitely going to be people that are like, wait, this was a role playing game. And then they're probably going to trickle down to Red because what they're going to love about 2077 and games like that is the open world aspect. We know this. So the details within that are its own thing. It's got the vibe of Cyberpunk, but it's that open world feel that people love about those styles of games. And man, when you can't get any more open world than a fucking tabletop role playing game. You know what I mean? It's your
Precisely,
mind.
and I hope myself, once the game comes out, the video game, get some people who are curious. Hey, you've got 3 characters you can play here. Let me take you back over here to Red, where we can play 8 or 9.
Right.
How'd you like
Oh,
that?
no, and I've kind of heard and seen like through some beta tester talk that I've seen online and things like that. It's going to get even deeper than what we know. I think it's going to be all those core roles, and then a lot of these roles are going to have subcategories now that give you all kinds of stuff, which we've seen in modules and side books and some
Yep.
homebrew things that have
Hmm.
been released over time. But I think Red is actually going to put it right in the core. It's going to be pretty
Now,
cool.
see that I find exciting because there are subcategories and sub roles throughout the cyberpunk universe, but they're all scattered. If
Right.
they're all in one place, I'm jazzing on that right now.
Right. No, exactly. That's my point. And
That would be nice.
yeah, and the other thing, me and Eric were talking about this the other day. Like we've seen another buddy of ours kind of post, and he's got the beta. I heard him over talking about it, and he was saying, hey, just to let everybody know, this red book, this PDF I have is so huge. Trust me, you aren't going to need anything from 2020 to supplement into this. Red covers everything and then some. So apparently, like it's everything I'm hoping it's going to be and then some. You know what I mean? I'm
Oh yeah.
excited.
All of Twitter.
Yeah, and back yeah, and back to the 2077. The other thing I wanted to mention, what I kind of dig about it too, is like following the timeline of Night City. It definitely feels like 2077 is what Night City was in 2020, but modernized in the world of the future sense. You know what I mean? Like Red brought it down to like this core fucked up place, and then over the course of another, what is that, 30 years later or whatever, right? 30
Yeah,
something
something
years.
like that.
Yeah, about 30 years later, you can imagine the city is fucking rebuilt and the huge corporations have done what they do, and the rest of the country is kind of figuring out how to live beyond what happened with this nuclear fallout shit. And it just looks like that when you see some of the test gameplay videos or some of the images online or things that get released or the concept art. It's like, man, it looks awesome. It looks like fucking exactly what you picture Night City in 2020 would evolve to in the year 2077.
Now here's the thing I'm
Like,
curious about though. For 2077 and cyclic storytelling, are we going to get the 5th corporate war in 2077?
I hope so. I hope
oh,
they keep going with that, something different with it. Like, maybe it's like some tribe wars or something happens. I don't know.
yeah, I don't think another corporate war would be good. Like you said, like tribe wars or something like that,
Change
because
it
we've
up.
The
done
first
4
Nomad
corporate
War?
wars.
But the only problem I see with that is, let's face it, corps are bigger than government. So what would happen if really you did try to have some type of 5th mega war that is the equivalent of these first, second, and third and fourth or whatever corporate wars? No matter what it is, I would just imagine the major corporations would step in and fucking squash it or take it over or pick a side. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see though.
There would be some interest, from some type of corp, and something would get involved because they're always behind everything. That's the money and power behind the world of cyberpunk.
If there's money involved, yes.
Yeah. But I think we covered everything in Night City. Is there anything we need to mention about Night City? We went over the history, some of the more famous people, the bigger corporations, and even some of the small ones, and the aesthetics and feel of the city and night markets and combat zone and We went over Red and how awesome that's going to be and everything about that. And then 2077. Is there anything else about Night City that we didn't cover or that we should mention?
I don't know how many people use SINs in their game, state identification numbers. That's something that's a big thing in
I
my
don't think
game.
enough do.
If you have a SIN in my game, you can go anywhere, do anything that a regular citizen can do. But if you don't have one,
Oh, I
you're not
like that.
traceable, but you're also not allowed to live like a normal citizen.
Yeah.
So SINs are good because hey, I'm a normal citizen, but they can track me. I don't want to be tracked, so I don't have a SIN, but I can't go into this market over here.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really like that. I never really play that into my games either. Just like the orbital thing, like it's something I need to consider because the way you just worded it right there, man, already my brain was racing with creative ideas as you can imagine.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Sins open up a lot of doors for creative storytelling and also really emphasizes that class system of actually having like some weight to your life and being of having value almost. It's like
Yeah. No, and I
because you
like
can
it.
do a
Because
lot with that.
remember, if you don't have a SIN, they call you a zip or a zero,
Right.
or they did max a blank. You don't exist in the system. Therefore, if the cops want to come and kick your ass, you're not a citizen, so you have no
You have
legal
no rights.
Right. No, exactly. I love that. And then that also kind of plays into like, uh, Night City being its own independent sort of world within
recourse
itself.
to
Yeah,
Yeah,
kick your
exactly.
ass.
It's kind of its
it's
own
sort of like
separate,
Casablanca was.
right. It's
It's
its own separate country for the most part within the states or
it's a
the,
neutral city state essentially.
right,
A
right.
great movie that everybody should watch.
Well,
And I
that's,
think they've already done a cyberpunk version of it in Barbed Wire, which was not particularly great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
hey,
now I gotta add that movie to the list too.
yeah. Well, hey, listen, I think we covered everything and then some, and that's great. I love Night City and Cyberpunk, and I really appreciate you guys joining me and contributing your thoughts and ideas to this. Hopefully, people listen and they get something out of it and they love it. And if you think of something that we didn't cover, please comment wherever you're hearing this podcast. Just let me know what's up. That would be awesome. And also, if you get on Facebook, join our group, the Cyberpunk Uncensored group, and make sure you like the official fan page, Cyberpunk Uncensored fan page. And if you want to watch some live gameplay, like I mentioned earlier, I GM 2 different campaigns weekly. You can go to youtube.com/mulliganlive and check out the live streams of that and chat in and contribute to the games and stuff. We have a lot of fun. But yeah, thanks guys for joining me. Any last words?
Thank you. I hope everyone tunes in and we spread the cyberpunk love far and wide.
Hell yeah. Eric?
It's been great talking again about Cyberpunk. I'm glad to finally get a chance to talk to Phil outside of Facebook, and hopefully you'll be kind to Team 2 next game,
Yeah.
especially if they're giving us Sins.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. No promises. Awesome. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you guys in the Cyberpunk group, and we'll do this again. Some different subjects, different episodes. I'll have you guys back. This was fun.
Please, I hope so. Thank you.
All right, guys, take care, and everybody listening, take care.